I'm Shaza. I come from Egypt, and I came for the MA program in Intercultural Communication and International Development in September 2017. I finished my degree in October 2018, and since February 2019 I went to Sierra Leone after spending my research placement there during my master's. I ended up going back for work. I work at the Catholic Mission in Sierra Leone, basically working with two institutions, being the University of Makeni and Caritas Makeni. We work with the higher education system in the country, one out of four universities in the country, and Caritas works more in the villages and in the community development projects, basically. Around the different districts in the northern province of Sierra Leone. And I write grants. I basically write and manage grants that come for projects either at the university or in the communities that Caritas is mainly serving. In the grants, basically we would have like a section where we put the description of the location where the grant will be taking place. And some tribes would have inherited professions. So one of the tribes is the Limba tribe, and their inherited profession is palm wine tapping, which is basically the extraction of a milky, nutritious liquid from the stem of palm trees. They give it to children, people like to drink it. It's nutritious, but it becomes alcoholic upon consumption. So it's a very interesting mix of a drink. And writing grants, sometimes people would just assume that this palm wine called Poyo is something that everyone knows all around the world, when actually nobody knows it outside of the borders of Sierra Leone. So we would just have to put context and put some meat on the bones of the grant to give it more life and to make it more explicable to someone that would read it from a different context or from a completely different cultural background, to actually be able to grasp and imagine the place where the project will be happening. These projects can be varying from livelihoods, food security, helping people to diversify their sources of income, maybe establish a microfinancing system for them to start their own businesses or to have their own ventures, and then get income and repay back to the community. It's very different depending on the need of the place. We focus also on health and education as areas of priority, people with disabilities, because many cultural practices, especially in Sierra Leone, would stigmatize people with disabilities and associate them with black magic or witchcraft. So they can be seen as witches, stigmatized, thrown out of their communities, nobody to pay for them, nobody to make sure they are registered, they get necessary health support, they get any type of education that can actually help them to maintain a livelihood and be financially somehow independent if possible. I think intercultural communication and international development come into they have so much intersection with each other, but it's not systematically highlighted sometimes in a way that help people put it into context and see how important it is to be culturally aware, or at least culturally inquisitive about a place, in order to provide any help if needed, or even identify help. Because many places in the world now, people would, or big international organizations would allocate a lot of money would be going to countries, and it's earmarked towards something. We were talking about goats. Many countries in Africa now would just receive massive amounts of goats from Europe for people to actually take care of goats, but then the goats would start getting ill, they would start dying. It's because the people are not even inheriting this as a profession from their ancestors. It's not in their system. Maybe they don't consume goat meat, they don't know how to use the milk of goats. It's not in the system. And here I think it comes in handy very much, so that intercultural communication can be the approach to development and to interpreting what development is, and working through a certain thematic area like livelihoods or poverty alleviation or security, food security specifically sometimes as well. This can be the area or the scope of work, but then the approach that you take is also very important, because unless you do a thorough needs analysis that's considerate of so many aspects and so many variables, many people would share the same area, they would be in the same community, but because they belong to different tribes, their beliefs are different, and that's why what they accept can be also different. So targeting the beneficiaries as people that can be different, not generalizable, not everything can be generalizable to them, is important. So I think intercultural communication came in as the approach to better understand how development can be done in a more considerable way. There was a big donor, a big Italian donor coming to an Egyptian community that was making windows. So their main profession was making windows, but the windows were multi-layered. It was an old-fashioned window. It looked very, I think it came from French occupation ages, something like that. But then it had different layers, where the first layer would be the wooden slats, and then comes the mesh for the mosquitoes, and then would come the glass. And for some reason, the Italian company came in with a big grant for the people, saying that this is going to be a social business. So they'll provide vocational training, they'll provide all the support that's needed and the materials to make alometal windows. The alometal windows looked very modern. They would probably be like the windows that we have here. But then everything was set. The people never complained, because it's money. At the end of the day, when somebody comes with money, it has power. The training was done, the materials were in, machines and everything, and they started the production, but then the business failed completely. The clientele for the windows was never there, and the money was gone. It was down the drain. And looking back at the evaluation, the monitoring and the evaluation reports that were done, the beneficiaries, the people that received the vocational training and the window manufacturers were just saying that our people would never buy this because the sun is too hot, it cannot pass only through layers of glass. They would not believe in this modern alometal, and they still would need their old good windows with the with the wooden slats and everything, so that they can actually make sure that they're secure against the mosquitoes, they're safe behind the wooden slats from the heat of the sun in the Middle East, and all of these things. So unless these questions were asked with no prejudice of modern is always good, or because we know better, and it even is a mistake that I sometimes would do, is that I would think, no, but that's better for them. But what is better? What says that this is better is what makes all the difference, I think. Yes, ethnography. Ethnography was not easy for me during when studying ethnography, and when I was attending the module. It was not an easy module. Lots of details and lots of things to write down, and the analysis and everything. But now I think I use ethnography in my daily life, or I'm mindful of the way I use ethnography much more than I thought I would. I think ethnography was the reason why I ask questions now a lot more, and I think I ask them in an order that's different from before. I try, or maybe I don't even try, I don't know. I think it comes more naturally now that there is a systemic process of being inquisitive and going through the process of knowledge, but it makes it faster for me. What before would take time for me to understand in a foreign context now takes I think maybe quarter of the time, because it takes me through the process. And I think also being aware of my assumptions and being self-critical when pinpointing when do I assume things in a conversation. Even now I would catch myself saying, no, I said I know you do that. Well, no, I should have asked, do you actually do that? Or maybe, do you do that at all? Like, having an open mind about things and pinpointing my own assumptions in my own process allows for me to actually better understand and exclude many pre-assumptions that would be obstacles in my knowledge process, and then speed it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah, go for it.
Right. Was the thing you said about diary writing, about last March and now, and do you want to say anything?
Yes. When I first went to Sierra Leone as an employee, like I'm full-time living there, I'm not there only on research. When I first went, I said, okay, I'll just be writing a diary. Almost every day, if like 3 times a week, I'll be writing the main things, the highlights of my week, what's happening. And now when I look back, it's now like 10 months later, and when I look back at the things that I found very weird and odd and very hard to grasp then, and how much I'm accepting of them now, not necessarily because my principles have changed, but it's probably because I'm much more accepting, I know the backstory, I'm much more empathetic, and I lived through it. Maybe I asked questions to give the reasoning behind it, and the way that it's very valid for the people that I live amongst. It's much more graspable and much more even easy for me to adopt sometimes as well, if I find it suitable for me to adopt. And I found that very interesting. It's like keeping track of things make me even look back at it. And it's not just, it's an ongoing thing. I can still be shocked today, but next year I can look back at it and say, oh, when I went to Sheffield, I was really shocked about this, but now it's fine. My typical day usually starts around 7 in the morning. I wake up. I live alone in a compound, but the compound that I live in has a lot of foreigners, so it's quite private. And then I go to work at 9. Usually, actually, I get like a visit or two between 7 and 9, unexpected visits. But in the beginning, that used to be very odd for me, but now it's absolutely fine. And then by 9, I would go to the office. Sometimes we would go on field visits to see ongoing projects in different districts around us or different villages, just to have like a quick monitoring visit, meet up with the people, see how things are going, if there are any improvements that can be done, if the fund is going, actually to ensure that the fund is being channeled the way that we want it to go, and the way that we promised the donor it would go as well. And then sometimes I would just go back to the office, have meetings, we'd be writing a grant. We usually write the grants in teams. And we try as much as we can not to have many foreigners on the team, but rather more locals, to have the balance of putting things actually into perspective more. I think also something that I might as well say, but we could remove this, is that I've noticed the power dynamic existing between foreigners and locals. That's why it's something very important now for us to have more locals than foreigners in grants writing meetings and proposals specifically. So after we would finish our meetings and everything, the day would end by like 5 o'clock, but because we have long days all year round, the sun sets around 6:30 in the evening. So we would go sometimes for a swim in the river. The weather is really nice almost all year round too. So we would just go try to practice the local language with the kids, because if you get soap with you on the way to the river, the kids would actually come to shower. And then this is the perfect time for them to be impatient and to just correct your Creole. Creole is the Creole language that's spoken in Sierra Leone. So that's the perfect time for us to try as much as we can to learn new words. And then they would tell you, no, don't say it like this, say it like that. While adults would never do that. They would never be as rude and like vicious with teaching you the language that kids can be, which is amazing. And at night, we just go have some rest, and then you go out and see friends. There are just no places where everyone, like bars and pubs where everyone hangs out. So you don't even have to necessarily have someone specific to meet. You can just show up to the place knowing that you'll meet people that you know, which is really nice.